Hi, guys. It's Thursday night, and we're back on the live. Hope everybody's having a decent day. It's been kind of rainy and misty here. Jonathan, good evening. Yeah, it's been a very nice. I like gray, overcast, rainy days, actually, and so it's been a good day for me. Gordon, good evening. James, good evening. Yeah, the when I was a kid, I learned to love gray, misty, overcast days because it wasn't so hot. And everybody says, "Yo, beautiful sunshine." I don't care nothing about that. But now gray overcast days, I'll take. Brett, good evening. Herbert, good evening. Earl, Edgar, Diane, did you call the surplus place? I picked one out. It had two small holes in it. It'd be easy to patch, and got it and took it up there to them, so they'll get it for you. Kodak, hello. Fred, hello. 2020, hello. David, good evening. Briar Smoke, good evening. Terry, Chad, Justin, yeah. Justin, you forgot. Them days run together after a while, don't they? Edgar, I traveled all over the country, but I always lived in the South. I just preferred it down here. But having said that, I love the cold country up there. I'd rather go visit the cold country than anything else. Okay, Dan, good. Hey, Bear's in the house, and hello to the little ones. How y'all doing? Uncle Blackie says hello. Gordon, is there a way to make or substitute an underquilt? Yes. You can take a poncho liner. And what you do is the poncho liner is slightly longer than it is wide. Take it so it's lengthways. And you got the center tie and then the two outer ties. Pull them together into one knot. Okay. And then you want to come up and hook where the cord attaches to the hammock back here. Drape the other half underneath. It's going to be a little bit short. On the bottom end, you put your shot cord or just an adjustable cord that you can run from there to the far end, so it should cup around you. The whole thing, it should contact the bottom of the hammock, and that leaves loft. Now, even warmer is to double it in half so that when you put the folded up poncho liner in this configuration underneath you, it'll be from about your shoulders to your butt. That'll do 99% of it. But for years, that's what I did to improvise a underquilt. I'd actually carry a few large safety pins, and where I fold it in half, I just hook the big heavy duty safety pin through and run the cord through that to run it to the bottom. All right, let's see. Where were we at? Big Bear's in the house. Got you. Fred. Yeah. Peter, hi Blackie. Dakota Hole and rocket stoves, what's the reason they don't smoke so much? Is it the right mixture of air and fuel? It's actually extending the combustion chamber. The vast majority of smoke that you see is just unburnt gases. It got out of the heat column. To burn, it has to have a proper balance of air, fuel, and heat. Once it gets away from the heat, it stops and it just turns into smoke. When you put it into a combustion chamber like a Dakota hole, that holds that heat even more intensely. And so as the air comes in, it's completely consuming it. And what comes out has very little oxygen left. And so that doesn't allow you to see the smoke. Fumes are still coming, but it's mostly water vapor. And so what you see as smoke is greatly dissipated. So it's a lot less smoke because of it. Higher combustion, lower smoke output. Okay, Nick. Rewild, good evening, sir. Joseph in Columbus, Ohio, yes, doing good. Okay, Zenric JMO, go to Waypoint Survival and look at upcoming classes, and it'll give you the registration, tell you about the classes there. And I've done several videos talking about it. So we've got a rough class schedule amongst ourselves, but And I just published a video talking about it and why we're having to do a little give and take, because we don't know our audience yet. And we don't want to line up all this stuff and then it's the wrong thing for this audience. So we're being very flexible. So when we get there, we can plug in what works and etc. Worm Wrangler, good evening. Backwoods Rambler, hello. Ah, Mr. Simmons is in the house. Homemade Surf Alliance. Good evening, sir. Jonathan Frisbee, glad you're there, brother. How you doing? Fred Freiberger, Blackie, have you ever used a falsa blanket? Doesn't ring a bell with me. I may not know it by that name, but it doesn't ring a bell to me. Tim Lacey, hello to Paris, Tennessee. Brett, I just ordered an 1851 Navy Steel Pieta revolver, 7 3/4 inch barrel for the woods. Any design flaws or anything I should anticipate? Not really. Now, of course, widen your rear sight. And what I recommend doing is just taking a hacksaw blade and just going through it where it just squares off the bottom. Don't go deep yet, just square it off. Then do your initial sightings and see how radically high it is. Some are worse than others. And then you can take just a little bit at a time to bring your point of aim down. That's how I'd start out with it. I want to clean it up, deburr it, like I've showed in my videos, break it completely apart. Look for any burrs or anything that might hang up. Look for scratches on a part that shows there's a burr somewhere. Clean up the little slot where the hand comes in and out beside the arbor to rotate the cylinder. And just try it out, and you'll figure out real quick. Now, that first 50 shots don't even count. Just shoot for fun. Because the edge of the rifling is so sharp, it's actually cutting the ball. After 50, it's been lapped, and it kind of settles down. So if you say, oh, my God, it's shooting to the left, and I need to modify it, you got 10 rounds out of the gun, as that rifling polishes in, the point of impact is going to move a little. So I just tell people the first 50 rounds, I just go out and just, throw a pine coming out in the water, boom. Nothing technical. I don't even begin to get serious about sighting it in until after about 50 rounds. Give it time to kind of wear in, break in a little bit. Gordon, I recently glued an emergency blanket to one side of a tarp. Are there any other things I can do to help hold heat? That was a real good one. That's a heat reflective and a thermal air barrier. So that should be a very good one right there. Gillespie, look to see you in Ohio as well. All right, Jonathan, we'll say a prayer for you, brother. Oh, yes, there is an address, but only people that sign up for the class get it. We have an address for the place, definitely, but it's his school. And so he only gives that out to students. James Bender. Oh, the Mexican blankets. Yeah. The cheap Mexican blankets. Used them in rendezvousing for years. Used them on the bed at the house. Wash them, put some woolite on them. They'll do okay. They're just soft cotton blankets. Dan Davis, good evening. Okay. JMO, you're registered. Okay. I'll get with first of this coming week will be the next time I get to post, because everything is lined up from now to then. We'll address that. Okay. It should have been on the site. James has been out of town doing other stuff. He's not only a teacher, he's also a preacher, and he's been out of town, and he's gone till Friday, till tomorrow. He's in Colorado, I think, on something with being a preacher. So he will be back this weekend. I'll get with him, and we'll make sure that everybody who signed up gets contacted and gets information. Common Sense Karen, hello there. Bushcraft with the Preacher, good evening, sir, and hello to Kansas. David Bullcalter, any experience with Bark River knives? I've handled them and used somebody else's. They seem to be very decent knives. There was a guy that used to hang out with us, Robert, that he was a big fan of the Bark River knives. I haven't seen him in a while though, but he used to hang out with us. Ooh, cool. Thanks, James. The free Powder Valley, free hazmat. That'd be a big help. Edgar, is riding a horse with just a blanket doable? Yes, for the short term. It's how well the horse's back is, how tough his back is, how much you weigh. You put a 100-pound kid on the back of a full size, Morgan, yeah, they won't even notice it. Quarter horse, it's how much of a point his back does, how much you're sitting on them muscles. And the big advantage of a saddle is they leave an arc there to allow those back muscles to work. You're sitting on those muscles. And so it's kind of like can cramp him up, kind of like we get sciatic. So yes, it is doable for short term. Native Americans didn't care if the horse died; they just get on him, throw a blanket on it and sit. And that was mostly because of the sweat and the chafing that would come from it. But yeah, that's the advantage of the saddle. It gives that muscles room to run up and down on a horse's back. Gray Wolf, you're not late at all, brother. Only been going for just a couple minutes. Homie, hello there. Yeah, Fred, those Mexican blankets, we used them in rendezvous at night. As long I learned to use them as like a layering. I would put down those blankets, and then I'd put my wool blanket on top, and then I'd put something real dense, hard blanket on top that air couldn't get through. And cotton blankets were easier for your legs to move. You didn't get tangled up like wool can sometimes when you're wearing layers. And it was just easier to sleep that way. So for years we used them, and they worked very well. Common sense, Karen. Sorry, it ain't me, it's them. And while we're on it, let's talk about YouTube a second. Now, when you come in to do your live, it says, oh, well, if you're going to monetize, you have to let us put ads in it, multiple rolling ads. No, I don't want that. Well, you have to. So I say, okay, no monetization. I ain't gonna make nothing off of this video. And they're getting pushy trying to make where they can put ads everywhere, So it ain't me adding ads. If ads start popping up, it ain't me. It's just YouTube. So. Oh, JMO, you're not being rude. I understand the frustration, and like I said, we'll deal with it. Edgar, you're probably right. A lot of that D2 steel and stuff like that's coming out of Germany. Germany is going to have some severe economic problems in the not too distant future. And a lot of those things coming out of Germany, D2 steel and a lot of the other crucible furnace steels, I bet they're going to get real hard to get. Red sorghum, yep, it sure is. It flies by, and suddenly here we are. Andy, good evening, South Georgia. Chuck, good evening. Edgar, no. The saddle is really there more for the horse than you, really. Again, it's how you're built. If you got a big buffalo butt, well, maybe you spread it out. But I was a kid with a bony butt, and I learned to ride on a McClellan saddle, an old Civil War Indian War era surplus McClellan, which is a little narrow thing that fit quarter horses I was on and stuff. And I thought I'd just ride it bareback. And then I found out how you can make a horse hurt because of it. It'll strain muscles because you're pinching muscles. Red sorghum, that new canteen, very interesting. Thank you. Friday's video, I've gone to the surplus place and walked around and just showed y'all that surplus place, including that 4-foot square box full of those canteens. And I had somebody in the comment said, they must have gave you a special deal. They're $89 on eBay. The canteen was $30 over with the whole set. Now you don't get the cup. They don't have them cups. I just got lucky. Like I said, I found that one. It was bent all kinds of shape. and I just knew how I could put it back together. I got lucky. But the canteens they got, I mean, man, this would be a great canteen to put in a pack because you just unscrew that lid and you can put it in the water and boil. You know, real handy. But 112, you got it, brother. And thank you for all of you that have gone over to my Rumble account and watched a couple videos I put. I've got 2 or 3 up there now. Oh, Dan Davis, thank you. And I've got more coming over there. I'm going to try to every week. I've got one on percussion revolvers where I'm talking about the 51 Navy and the Pocket Navy over there. So, now remember, I had to rush and do all this because I was going to be in the woods for a week. And so last week, so I had to do a lot of videos in a hurry and get them all edited and posted so I could have my time in the week out in the woods. And it's going to be a busy week this week too, so I'm doing the best I can. Stainless Trails, hello to Oregon. Powder Valley also has the Shunson and Swiss powder, yes, and I understand through the things that the GoEx is starting to show back up. Now I'm gonna give it a while to really. I'm okay right now, but I figure at the first of the year I'll start looking for a little GoEx. Brett Johnson, exactly. It gives there to be a barrier on the horse for sweat to go to and for chafing, and so you don't rub a hot spot. And that saddle may rub a hot spot, so that blanket gives something a little bit of a give and take. Plus, as you know, when you get on a horse, he's puffed up, his belly's full of air. So you cinch that cinch up good and tight, and you get on him, and everything blood tight, and we're good. And you walk right about 2 miles, and you get off, and you check that cinch. That sometimes that sucker's hanging that far below his belly because he kind of walked off that air now, and he farted a little bit and blowed air, and he's shrunk up. If you don't, you're going to end up going off the side when he twists real quick. Ask me how I found that one out. They do have a lot of those Arctic mitts and stuff like that. I think I've seen the trigger finger ones like you're talking about. I'm pretty sure they do. Just call them and tell them what you want. I'm pretty sure they got it. Gordon, I have thought about it, and what I'm going to do is if right now it's to do the gun stuff, but I am going to take, if a video does really, really good, I'll throw it over there too and just help it out. So I've already been monetized over there, so that's going to help. We shall see. Fred, Blackie, I would like to see a video on repair kit needles. I'm not positive on what sail needle looks like. Will do. Have list right here. Repair kit. Needles. Okay, we will do it. And I've showed several years ago, but I'll show again how you can take a sewing all on a Swiss Army knife and how you can sew leather stuff with it as well. So I'll show you different ways to repair. That's a good question. Garen, I saw Scab's interview with you and William and was wondering if you had mentioned incorporating those navigation mods on the WCSK to William. I have. We actually talked about that when we were designing it. And we decided against it because the market we were going for was going to rely on a compass anyway, the military type, that type of thing. And so if we went and put it on there, we thought it'd make it look kind of like a gimmick. And it was such a radical design. We didn't want to give the naysayers anything to come after. So we wanted just a pure knife design. But we did talk about that extensively, about putting marks on it so it could be used as a navigation aid and a few other things. Dan Lutz talked about if you hung a thread, in a weight where you could put it into a certain point and be able to tip it and have an inclinometer for guys up in the mountains to know how steep something was. But we talked about it. We just decided against it. Keith, I backed away from the classes right now because of YouTube. because of the way they do you. If you do anything with any kind of gun, positive, negative, they don't care. They basically cut off half your money out. And they claim they don't, but they do. And so now I've gone to Rumble, and I'm Blackie Thomas on Rumble, and I'm posting cap and ball. In fact, this Saturday I will post a cap and ball video over there, and I'm gonna start doing more of my cap and ball stuff and other gun stuff like 1911 SKS, AR platforms. I know as much about modern guns as I do about witchcraft. I was a gunsmith, and so I'm gonna be posting more of that stuff over there. I stuck strictly with the percussion stuff on YouTube because I didn't want to flag them, because I didn't want them to attack my channel, because I'm predominantly a witchcraft channel. And so that's the reason. But I have started on Rumble. And if you'll go over there and hook up with me, it will be on Saturdays is when I will post new ones. And this Saturday will be on the Pocket Navy and the 51 Navy, talking about power and comparison of them. Fred, you're welcome. Andy, yes, all of my percussion revolver videos will remain on YouTube. And if I get it, and I've got them all backed up. So if they suddenly, the powers that be made them go, I will do it. And I'm hoping that after the first of the year, I'm going to be real busy from now to Christmas. But I'm hoping after the first of the year, I'm going to start taking all my percussion videos of that entire 100 and something, 200 something playlist and posting them on to Rumble. So I'll have them somewhere else. So, but like I said, if I hear anything or suddenly they tell me we're deleting all of da 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 da, I've got them backed up. I've got every one of my videos backed up just for that. Very well, correct. J-Mo, glad you found it. Okay, Y-E-R-D-L-E, Yardley or Yurdy? I'm just going to say Yurdy. If I'm saying it wrong, I apologize. What my southern tongue is, but yeah, Kukri House, great knives, really good stuff. Edgar, I can about guarantee you that there is a vast majority. But see, it's kind of like the old adage of they was talking about one of the old western towns, and it said that it was the poker game. Everybody knew it was rigged. Everybody there was cheating. He said, "Yeah, but it's the only game in town." You can go to Rumble, but your viewership's going to be a fraction. I'm starting out ahead of most people because I've got right at 85,000 followers, and according to the YouTube algorithm and stuff, they're telling me that 80% of the people who watch me are not subscribed. So 80% is 85,000. That's how many people are watching me. And so I've got a real advantage jumping over Rumble that hopefully some of y'all will follow me. And, but somebody just starting out trying to go over, it's a hard uphill climb. Worm Wrangler, I don't think I said witchcraft. But sometimes when I try to say woodscraft, it comes out woodscraft. Southern, sorry, just very southern. Awesome. Bad boy cheats up there in Alaska. Y'all about to get a typhoon storm. They're talking about going to be remnants of it going to be hitting Alaska. I just saw a blurb of it a few minutes ago before I got home. Strange weather. Okay. Channel. Do you have any thoughts on using horn or antler bullets? A channel called Kentucky Ballistics recently did a video firing them. In the past, in hard times like mountain men, they would shoot everything from acorns on up. The problem with it is you can get something that'll fit and it'll fire, but it won't go very far. It's weight, mass, motion. So you could make an aluminum bullet, but it will shed speed because it doesn't have the mass, see, to carry it. Like, think of it this way. a ping pong ball and a golf ball, roughly the same size. How far can you throw a ping pong ball? 20 yards, maybe 15 yards. You about to throw your shoulder out of socket as hard as you want, and it just like a parachute, just loses speed like that. The golf ball you can throw much farther. And so any kind of projectile of horn, bone, ceramic, whatever, you can get something that'll shoot, but it'll be so light it won't have any range, it won't have any penetration. That's the reason we use lead or copper jacketed lead today. The only other really good substitute is gold. Nobody wants to shoot gold bullets, but they have experimented for 100 years now. All them voodoo chemists trying to come up with an alternate for lead to be used for bullets. Believe me, the military would jump on it in a heartbeat. They looked at plastics, ceramics, everything for training ammo, for actual combat ammo, and it just always keeps coming back to a lead something with a jacket on it of some kind. Lead's the weight that gets it there. Garen, yeah, I know the markings on it. I taught him how to do like my uncle taught me, for using it for a time teller and for a navigation aid. There we go. Gray Wolf, the old Civil War rangefinder. It had a V notch in it, and you held it out at arm's length because it had the average length of a man's arm, and you lined up the individual in the V, and where he was filling it up told you how far away it was. So it was a very quick rangefinder used for it, and yet they didn't use them. We know that. That was one of the chief problems in Civil War musketry is they did not stress range finding to their officers. They touched on it in training, and they never did it, and the guys in the field wasn't doing it. And somebody did a demonstration not long ago where they put up a man-sized target at 200 yards, and they put the individuals 100 yards away with their guns set to 400 yards. They went right over their heads. Then they set it to 100 yards, and they hit the feet. So the trajectory of the musket, that's one of the reasons they talked about how 100 men in a line, only 100 yards apart, aiming each other, fire, and 10 guys would fall. They shot higher, they shot low, But the British, they focused on range finding. So an officer had one of them things around his neck. Whenever you saw enemy forces, he lined up right then and told them what to set the thing. The soldiers were not allowed to adjust their sights until an officer told them. So he range find right quick and said, set it to 300 yards. The British were much more effective in taking out lines of enemy because of that. We didn't stress accuracy. That's the reason by 1873 we got super serious on accuracy after that. And by the 1875 Indian Wars, we had guys that were standing flat-footed with a single shot 45-70 trapdoor and engaging targets at 700 yards and being effective. So range finding, that was the big thing. Elvin, Blackie, can you pick out a canteen set for me? Are you talking about the Arctic type set? If you'll call the ladies, they got a bunch of good ones sitting there right now, already picked out, good to go. Jonathan Frisbee, yes, sir. I'll be home next week. Eddie Lewis, well, last week we didn't have one, so you didn't miss much. I just posted a video last week. I was out in the woods for a week with friends. Yeah, I have heard that as well. The fish scaler on a SAK, given those intervals, you can use it for it. I have not tried it, but I've heard of it. Edgar, I've heard of that. Military equipment and stuff where that would detect when you were being sighted on. Um, so they knew to go down. And also, too, a lot of your smart weapons, there's a laser designator painting a target. And they learn to put a dazzler on a real important target so that should it be lit up by an enemy force aiming, so you got a missile inbound, the dazzler would go off and start just doing all kinds of wild stuff, and it'll confuse the missile as which one to follow. And it starts trying to do that, and they can't do but so much, and they'll blow up in the air. So we thought Buck Rogers was science fiction, guys. And now, we got Dick Tracy watch phones and everything else, Star Trek flip phones. Oh, yeah. .38-55 rifle. Yes, sir. I had a Winchester 94 and a .38-55 for quite a while. Shoots very well. Does anything a 30-30 will do, or a little bit better, like a 35 Remington. Yeah, they're very good rifles. Exactly, Edgar. Anti-missile disco show. Activate. Yeah. Oh, cool, Gray Wolf. Good luck with that. Chuck Miller, yeah, I want a Jetsons car that folds up into a briefcase. That would be so cool. Just don't forget the kid in the back seat. Jeff, hello to Nevada. Randy, yeah, beam me up, Scotty. Gray Wolf, I'm sure there would be. When y'all are watching a lot of especially a lot of the European bushcraft channel, have you noticed as they don't talk? They start out, they pick up their pack, and they come walking, and the camera's focusing on a leaf right here, and you see them in the background come by, and then it shows them stepping over the stream, and for 3 minutes or so, it's just him moving. Well, they're trying to get the algorithm to get past 3 minutes. You're not going to turn away to figure out what it's about. And then he's going to set up camp, and he's going to cook, and he's going to do his stuff, and he's going to break down camp, and he's going to travel a little bit, and he's going to set up camp again and do like that. It's kind of voyeuristic camping. It's for people that, man, I love the outdoors, but I'm stuck here in the city. I'm in this day job, and I can't get free. And so it's the same reason that people go and watch pro bass fishing shows. You'll sit there for 30 minutes watching the guy just go, zip, zip, waiting for a strike. And it's kind of voyeurism. You want to sit and enjoy it. And so, Gray Wolf, do it. There are people that would like to know what it's like to run a dog team in Alaska. They just want to look at Alaska. They just want to look at the snow, and that type stuff. Go for it. Some of the best channels out there are just people doing their everyday stuff, but it's the setting and the environment. Okay, the comment suddenly stopped. Are we still there, or did I get booted off? Ah. Oh, good God, Randy, yeah, a 594 diameter. That thing's going to be close to probably 3/4 of an ounce. Kodak, Worm, thank you. Yeah, just suddenly it stopped. I want to make sure it didn't freeze up somewhere. But yeah, a 594, you're talking about 20 gauge. Because 20 gauge is 62, you're close enough. It's basically a 20 gauge slug when it hits. Chuck Miller, exactly. I do that. One of the reasons I like Ray Mears videos is because he takes time to show the background and everything. A lot of times I'll put stuff on just to, kick back and relax, have a little wee dram of 18-year-old scotch and just enjoy it, you know. Anthony, glad to do it, brother. Well, hello to Matterman and from Boogertown, Tennessee. Yeah, Jonathan, you remember that whatever government sent the thing to the phone that Wednesday of deep? Uh-huh. Okay. Can you ever remember any time that the government did something strictly for the reason that they said they were going to do it? And then later we found out the real reason they did it? Yeah. So, internet slowing down. Yeah. What are y'all bringing online? Gordon, you don't have to have anything different. Just do you. Now, this is when I mentioned in my video last Thursday. It's tough because not everybody um, has the gift of gab, that it's just easy for them to talk or has a look or whatever. And so you got channels out there that's got righteous content, but you just don't want to watch them or listen to them because of who they are, the way they talk or how they do things or whatever. And so it's not as much, to be honest, about what you're doing, it's how you're doing it. And so you've got people out there that have very successful channels and really have the skill level of like a first year Boy Scout. I see it all the time. And they're trying. I ain't trying to badmouth them. I don't think everybody's got a channel has got to be an expert. I'm far from that. Everybody's got to start. Everybody's got to learn. But the only thing that information and recommendation I give is be human. Show the screw ups. Be honest. I tried this, it didn't work. Okay, what did I miss? Work through it. If everything is perfectly polished, that always makes me think, okay, what ain't you showing me? And it makes the people more human. I've showed many of my screw ups on camera. Like, yep, it didn't work. And I went to dye a haversack one time with red clay. The red clay we got down here will dye t-shirts this orangey color. And I had a bright white canvas rucksack, haversack I'd got. And I didn't like the bright white, and I was going to tone it down. So I went and got red clay, and I made a big old thick slurry of red clay in a bucket, submerged that sucker in there, and I left it overnight, and I came out, and it was brilliant white. Whatever was on that material was going to prevent it from staining, some sort of stain guard or whatever. So, screwed up. Sorry. Well, I don't screw up. I failed. And I got a lot of people that said, thank you for showing the screw up. I would never thought you could get a white thing not to dye in that. So that's my advice. Be human. JB, glad you got you a gun. Hope you enjoy the flintlock. Gray Wolf, don't worry about it. That's when there's an edit button. Just be you. That's the one thing. Be you. And anytime you're doing anything on camera, just be you. If they like it, they're going to like it. If they ain't going to like it, they ain't going to like it. Don't ever pretend. Just be you. Which would you choose, a Colt Pocket in 31 or a Remington 63 in 31? Of those two, And if it was going to be for concealment, I'd take the Remington 31 because it is a little bit more compact. Choir boys in the house. Good evening, sir. Scab did a lot of videos when we were out there at camp. Had a great time. Got to see a lot of knives. Got to talk a lot of knives. He got to meet William Collins, and they talked knives. So he made a lasting impression on William. Tim Lacey, yeah, I hear you. I always heard so they could stack them a little higher, stack more in the back seat without it rolling around. Oh yeah. Jonathan Frisbee says Scab's new nickname is Stitch. Well, Randy, hello. Randy WSG. I think we got more than one Randy in here right now. But Scab and I got something coming up that we're not going to say anything about just yet. But there's going to be a thing coming up, and we'll have video to talk about a little later. So y'all check out Choir Boys Outdoors. That's his channel. He does all kinds of knife stuff. But there is something coming up between us that you're going to get to see. And might even get to participate in, we'll say. Yep, big news on the way. Randy, I taught Scab everything he knows about cutting fingers. Man, that knife did such a beautiful, clean cut. It was just, and the minute I saw it, I called. I went, it bit you. Know it? Yeah, it did. You can claim that a knife is sharp, but you can see that a knife is sharp too. And I know William's knives. So, Bloodstone, hello. Edgar, Detective Special or Pocket Hammerless for EDC? Pocket Hammerless. The Detective Special will get lent down around where the hammer rides in, and it'll get kind of sticky. And you'll cock it, or you'll pull the trigger back, and it'll come back, and lint will actually bind up, and it'll bind the hammer about halfway down. My daddy carried a Colt Detective Special, and about every 3 months, I'd have to take that gun apart and clean it out. Grandpa Buckshot, yes, you can use one that's already been fired as a snap cap. Dan, do you like smoothbore musket or 31 caliber muzzleloader for squirrel hunting? I have had both, and I prefer a smoothbore, to be honest. Usually the squirrels in small game are in thick cover, a lot of leaves, and so the rifle doesn't really come into its own until later in the winter, where you get a clear shot. That's when 22 really does. But if it's something in the thick stuff, you got to kind of ferret them out a little bit. A smoothbore musket is basically a 20 gauge shotgun, and so I can also take big game with that. Put a big round ball in it, and I can take deer with it, hog with it. But the 31 is limited because of its size of its pellet to small game and nothing much bigger than like a coyote. Yeah, you could take a deer with it, but it's not legal to take a deer with it. You have to be very close because it's like trying to shoot them with a 22. But the smoothbore, and I had a 2-liter Chase for many years I loved. If you look at the guys that are importing them from India, the one that's the Tecumseh version, the shorter 36-inch barrel, that'd be the one I'd get if I was going to get one, start back over. Of course, I'd refinish it because their finishing doesn't talk to me. But yeah, I like smoothbore musket better than I do the 31s. I have a 51 Navy. I thought about getting a conversion cylinder. Would you get a gated conversion or the plate with the individual firing pins? I don't like the idea of using the safety pins. of the two, it's going to be far easier to get the one with the pre-made up firing pins. It really is. The conversion to put the gate in, you've got to modify your gun some to make it fit, to have room for that loading gate to go in and out, to get clearance on that side to be able to put them in. So if you're not wanting to do a lot of gunsmithing, go with the one with the solid cylinder. If you are wanting to make it into a cartridge conversion and kind of leave it in that context, then go with the gated one, because once you convert it, when you convert back to percussion, it kind of looks odd, that big old groove down the side and everything. Gray Wolf, hey, concerning the 3855, what do you think about having one built on 358 bore size so you could play with pistol bullets as well? Well, the Winchester big bores were something like that. Was a dadgummit. Now, I know they had them. They brought them out years ago in the 80s, but it was a Winchester that was in a 375 big bore, I think they called it, which is a modern version of 3855 is what it is. As long as you got a rifling bore that could handle it, yeah. And I know they do make a 358 bore in a European caliber, so you might be able to get a barrel. But I don't know. I think it'd be okay. But when you take a pistol bullet, which is meant to travel at about 1,000 feet per second, 1,500 feet per second, and you push it to 2,500 or 2,800 feet per second, a lot of times them bullets come apart. We had a Desert Eagle in 44 Magnum but when there was this was back in the 80s, when there was no information out there on loading for it. And we kept trying to find the load, maximum load, and you're taking the empties out and they're not cratered, the primers aren't flowed. You could stick the empty brass back up and then just fall out of the chamber. And we had done climb beyond the maximum load on everything in the load manuals. It was getting scary to us. And we were firing jacketed bullets and they were coming apart in midair in buckshot pattern at 25 yards. And the gun was still acting like it was shooting a target load. So yeah, you could do it. Be great for a one gun idea of coming up with the bullets you could interchange. Just realize you're probably not going to be able to load it that hot, because depending on the bullet, how well can it hold up to that kind of speed and pressure. Worm Wrangler, you sub choir boys, awesome. Oh yeah, Jonathan, you got a little nick too then. I have not, Garen. I have not had tried one of that. I got my Kukri House Kukri several years ago, and I've had many along the line, but I haven't tried that one. Yes, Edgar, that is good training for him. 1 out of 357 maximum. 357 maximum and a handgun had a problem of where it was initially on. I don't know if they've addressed that, but it would cut the frame of the gun. When the bullet would exit the chamber, there was so much heat coming off, it would actually, like a cutting torch, cut the frame of the gun. Smith & Wesson only guaranteed their guns for 500 rounds. Ruger Super Blackhawks only guaranteed it for 1,000 rounds or less, and they wouldn't repair the gun because it would cut the frame. And that's what doomed the 357 maximum, was the powder was causing it, like a blowtorch, to cut the frame above it. In fact, when you get a Dan Wesson, they would give you 2 barrels because they expect you to shoot the rifling out of the barrel, and accuracy would disappear after 250 rounds. .375 Winchester. That's it. Thank you, Justin. Yeah, 375 Winchester big bore. That was it. That was their modern take on the 3855. Tim Harper, good evening. Gordon, yes, you can load percussion revolver with shot and use it for snake load. I think I've done that in a couple of videos and showed it. I prefer the 44s for that because just bigger capacity. And I use a 410 shot cup in it to get the best pattern possible. But the 36s can work for it. Will, what do you think of the Ruger Mini 30? It was a good gun. But when Ruger scaled down the grand design to make it, and the military actually looked at it for a time. The Rangers actually did a field trial with it in a automatic. They got a problem, and that's where it dumps all that gas pressure underneath the handguard. You know, your gas system burp, so to speak, out there. And they actually set handguards on fire. So they went to a metal handguard on top, and etc. When they scaled it down. So as far as accuracy, the Ruger Mini 30 will outshoot any AK, any SKS. Absolutely. If you're looking for a tactical gun to burn through a mag, wrong design. It gets hot too fast. It doesn't dump the heat as well. So AKs and stuff are superior to that. But if you're looking for a gun to carry on the farm and use for hunting, the 30 is a very accurate gun. A good friend of mine had the 1430, and we would hand load 7.6239, and it would do anything a 30-30 would do out to 150 to 200 yards all day long. So it was a very good gun. Yeah, it's actually, there is actually a gas runs the length. It comes in right there in front of the chamber, runs the length of the barrel, and the bottom of the slide or whatever has got the actual gas piston, so it kind of blows back. So the gas runs from there down. So instead of trapping it at the muzzle, it traps it at the rear and runs it up there, and that's what blows and cycles the gun. That's the reason they tell you never, ever, 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 ever shoot leads in it, because it would plug up that gas tube. And once it did, there was no way to get it out of there, because it makes a 90-degree turn. How they make that chamber, I don't know, to do that 90-degree turn. But they did it. Dances with Empties, good evening. Tim Harper, that will work as long as the top's covered. Yeah, because if you fill it up and put it in the freezer, the ice will swell up instead of out. Path of least resistance. Randy, that would be probably very doable to turn it into 307 maximum for that. You know, because that'd be completely closed breech and everything. It'd make it a real good barn burner, and I don't think it would affect your accuracy. You know, if just take a chamber reamer and deepen it slightly. What do you think about the 458 SOCOM? I just ordered one. I haven't had a chance to actually use one, and but it, from reports I've seen, it ought to be a very interesting thing to shoot. But that's about all I can say. I haven't actually held one, used one, or etc. Okay, that'll work. Yeah, hydraulically force it out. I've done that. We would fill an old World War II canteen absolutely to the top and have a big dent in it, and we'd get a wooden dowel that would just barely fit in the neck, you know, and then we'd wrap a rag around it and hit it with a hammer. Wham! It hydraulically. As long as you don't bust the seam, it would push outward a dent. So. Yeah, Edgar, you're correct. The Mini 30 will outshoot the SKs and stuff. Now, the old Mini 14s, that comes down to, a lot of times it was the ammo. The chamber in the Mini 14s was a little generous because they were going for the military market. So they wanted it to work in mud and everything else. So it was not set up for accuracy, where the Mini 30 was. They weren't even going to try to argue with accuracy, with you know, reliability and numbers. That's going to go SKS and AK, but they wanted accuracy out of it. Now, the later Mini 14s, the ranch rifles they were much more accurate because they kind of gave up on trying to compete with ARs and just make it into an accurate rifle. And they tightened up them chambers significantly. Branch preparedness. Yep, in 2 weeks, we're almost there. Okay, Worm Wrangler. Cooker question. What's the notch? What that's for is they'll tell you it's got religious significance, but really what it is that edge is very hard and thin. The back of the kukri is like a 25 Rockwell and the edge is like a 70. And that steel is going to flex. It's a tool steel. It's a spring steel. If you didn't put that notch in there and allow that, when you hit that metal to flex, it'd crack and go right through the steel and it'd break. So they learned to put that notch there because you've got a harmonic wave. Think of like a tuning fork. When you hit, bung, it's like a wave in the water flowing. And that nice thin edge, if it comes up to a 90-degree back, it breaks. And that starts the tear. And steel is more elastic than rubber. You just got to have something hard enough to make it bounce. And it'll just pop in half like it was made out of ice. And so they put that notch in there so that shock wave as it runs down that edge is diverted around. And so it changes direction and it keeps it from breaking. Dances with empties. Have you tried a 6 to 8 inch rifle to insert in your 20 gauge? Yes, I have one in 9mm and 38. And there will be a video coming up on Rumble very shortly where I go out and I'm shooting at like 15, 18 yards and I'm making groups like that with it. You know, no problem. I can keep all shots on the bottom of a Coke can with it. Yeah. JB Blackie, design and produce a stainless canteen for those Arctic canteens. Beat them to it. They got money to produce stuff like that. I don't. I can design it, but they got the money. So, Keith, hello. Gordon, I tied knots one on top of the other to make a toggle to go across. Is there any disadvantage over wood? Not really. Some of my early videos that I did it like 2012, 2011, something like that, where I showed that where I would just put a toggle of knots about 3 inches long, and I would just double the line up, stick it up through the grommet, and come over from the other side and stick that in and pull it tight and make a quick so I can pop it and drop it off. It works just fine like that and doesn't have to have a wooden toggle, doesn't have to pick something up off the ground or nothing. Works just fine. As long as your grommets are sufficiently strong that they're not just going to pop out of the tarp, and the cordage you're using versus the size of the grommet is where that toggle can span across it and not pull through that no matter what. See, but usually paracord and standard tarp grommets are just fine. Brett, is there a significant difference between a 5-inch barrel and a 7.5-inch barrel in a black powder revolver? Usually, with maximum loads, you're going to lose about 100 feet per second. That's going to be it. For practical accuracy, no. I've got a 5-inch barrel Remington Sheriff, and it's generated 900, shooting a full load with a Johnson & Dow conical in it. I've got on camera me shooting it, and it generated 975 feet per second. That's pretty impressive for a 45 caliber 200 something grain slug. You know, I have a 5-inch barrel. That's more than adequate for what we need. Keith Ruff, I do too. I'm pulling for Mike. I mean, they're bullying him is what they're doing. and I want Mike Bellevue to do it. I enjoy his stuff. I talk to him on Facebook sometimes, and he's a really good guy. Very, very knowledgeable. I'd love for us to be able to get together for a weekend and just sit and talk and play with guns. I would love to review the Diamondback and that. Those were great guns. I wonder if the modern ones are, but if I get my chance to get a hold of one, I'll do a review on it. Okay, Outback Out. Greetings from Australia. Could you please let me know what is happening with the Master Woodsman so I can catch up the money to be sent as I finally get it to you. Right now, I've had to back away from doing the Master Woodsman series, so I've got, I don't know how many, 30 or so videos on there. And if you'll contact me at Down and Dirty Woodscraft, and having said this, I have to let you know I haven't looked at that thing in a week and a half now because I've been wrapped up with everything else. But I will get tomorrow, I will get on Down and Dirty Woodscraft at gmail.com. And if send me a thing on there saying, hey, Blackie, and I will see what I can do to work with you to get that to you, get you that information, get them hooked up to you. Because I've had people that have come in recently and discovered it and want to go back all the way to the whole series, and I've just and put their name down and put them in a thing and start sending them, one a month or how many they want to do. So I can do that. Kent, like I said, I haven't been up there for a while. That's where my haversack stuff is. I will be getting to it, but this month has been just a whirlwind, and I haven't had a chance to do it. When I got onto my other email account, when I got back, I had 1,400 emails. I've been digging through. And last night is when I finally dug through those 1,400. And so tomorrow I will get on to that one where the haversack is and start digging through that. I expect it to be 600 to 800 comments, emails on there. I got to dig through and see what is what. So I will do what I can. I will get back with you as quick as I can. And you can also contact me on Facebook. Just Blackie Thomas on Facebook. John Kennedy, good evening, sir. Yes, Dances was empty. I believe that short little one, yeah, I think that 45 Colt was keyholing. Pretty clear it was. It wasn't stabilizing. That may be the bullet I'm using just didn't stabilize well in that. I set it up for another gun. So I will, if I decide to hand load for that, I'll adjust. But yeah, I believe you're right. It was keyholing. Well, hello, Andrew Baker from the Caldwell Correction Center. Damien Bloodstone, totally true about metal harmonics. It is the same thing breaking the harder steels put out today in most knives and choppers. Proper tool for the project also counts. Correct. The fastest way to break a knife is to take a steel hammer and start beating on it, trying to baton with it, because that steel sends that shock wave into that steel, and then it wants to rebound back into that steel, and it's like a woo 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 like that. Here's a little something to point out a little bit better. You can go look at almost any of the rifle scopes for shooting on guns. And if you read the fine print, it will tell you if you put this onto an air rifle, you void the warranty. They will not guarantee it. They will not replace it. Because when you fire a rifle or a shotgun, there's this shock wave that goes one way. But an air gun probably has got a piston or something that's going to bounce. So there's this whoa. When you fire it, it pushes one way and then it decells and it kind of bounces on that spring. And that whoa will just tear a scope to pieces. And so you can have an expensive scope and it'll just fall apart on an air rifle. But an air rifle scope, you can put on a huge kicking rifle, and it takes it with no problem. Centerpoint was a company that when I was reading a couple of years ago, there's a guy that's one of the lead editors for Rifle Magazine and Handloader. And he's a guide out of Alaska, and he's got a famous gun that's in a 416 Remington. Now, you got to understand the 416 Remington is considered one of the most violently kicking guns there is. You know, they're bigger and badder, but they don't kick as violently as that gun does. And the nickname of that rifle is Old Ugly. If you ever seen its homemade camo pattern, you'll understand why. But it was eating scopes. And so the guy that owned the rifle, it was a writer, he said anybody that wanted to send him a scope to test, he would test it on Old Ugly. And if it made, I think he said if it made 100 rounds and was still good, they could use his name for free. Well, bunches of scopes showed up, including some real high dollar stuff. It was like a $2,600 Zeiss sniper scope showed up, and a bunch of others. And this little video scope from a company called Centerpoint, he'd never heard of them. He looked it up and saw they made air guns. And he just chucked it back in the box. You know, they're just trying to get some publicity. And so he loaded up and he went shooting. And that $2,600 Zeiss, 4 rounds in the front lens fell out of it. He killed every scope. And then when he contacted the guys to tell them how they'd done before he put it in print, he contacted Centerpoint and told them, so I'm not going to include yours because this is a real gun, not an air rifle. And they said, hold on a minute. If you look at the fine print on all them scopes you tested, it'll tell you this, that you can't put it onto an air rifle. Our air rifle scope should handle your gun easily. So to prove them wrong, he slapped that scope up onto Old Ugly, and 500 rounds later, it was still holding a 0 at 100 yards. That's why Walmart went to carrying Centerpoint scopes. And they were only like $75 for a 3x9. And when I was selling stuff, I pointed that out, and I sold them to a lot of people shooting 7mm magnums, 300 Winchester magnums, everything else. And they were coming back saying, "This, you can't break this thing." He said, "I dropped it out of the deer stand. It hit 5 limbs on the way down. Scope's fine." Yeah. So that's the harmonic, the shock wave. We don't think about that. But in knives and chopping tools, anything where there's a shock wave, you've got to deal with that shock wave. If they don't effectively do it, you break things. So you see a lot of knives and stuff that are coming out, ooh, it's a such and such, and then they go, bing, because it just ain't built for it. Great steel, not the right steel for this job. Gordon, I wish they made a 31, 36, and 44 with different barrels for the same front. Yeah, so you can interchange and make a set. Uberti did that for a long time, where you could order the 3-inch barrel, the 5-inch barrel, the 7.5-inch barrel, and the 12-inch barrel for 51 Navy in 44 or 36. I don't know if they still do it or not, but you just got to go look at the replacement parts catalog. I know Dixie has usually stocks both barrels, and you can get separate barrels and just refit it and change it over. JB, this coming run should be in about the middle of next month. So we're a little over 4 weeks out, something like that. It'll be in November. And then we'll be starting the run that will deliver in January next month. Or that's the game plan. I will be seeing manufacturer Jay in a couple of weeks personally. And so we'll make sure where everything's at. And I'll give y'all an update, let you know. Charles, is the world getting some of your backpacks someday soon? Yes, like I said, it's coming up, which will be next month. We pay for it. You know, we take up the money. I pass the money along to the manufacturer. He then has to create them. And so that's the reason we got such a long thing, because you don't make something for free. And this stuff ain't cheap. I mean, that material is like $17, $18 a yard. You don't just go to cutting it up for nothing. And so we just put it in, wait for it's done. As soon as it rolls to me, I'm shipping. I got everybody's name listed and ready to go. Randy, have you ever used wax bullets in pistol rounds? Yes. We used to take 38 specials and thumb press the case into a block of paraffin wax and then prime them with a hot primer and shoot them indoors for tactical drills and house clearing drills and stuff like that. Had an old abandoned industrial building they'd let us do that in. It was heavy block walls, and it was out on County Road in the middle of nowhere, and they didn't care. There wasn't no windows in it anymore. But it was like 20, 30 different rooms, and so we'd play clearing drills and stuff like that with it, shooting targets inside. There wasn't no chance of ricochet. That wax just hit and go, and that was it. Dance was empty. Yeah, a skunk can do that pretty well. It's amazing how long it'll linger. Okay, Harold, you get the FIA 45 caliber Kentucky rifle. What would be a good starting load? I'd start about 40 grains and then ease up. Somewhere between 40 to 60 is where your sweet spot is going to be for accuracy. A hunting load, I wouldn't go over 75, but your accuracy may not be that great, and so you just play with it, but start around 40 and go up. Cool. Well, thank you very much, Bushcraft Preacher. I'm glad you enjoy it and like it. Oh yeah, Gray Wolf. It's a real eye opener when you pull the trigger in a shooting range with a hot gun like that, ain't it? We had a Desert Eagle. We didn't. My best friend did, and when he would shoot, the shooting range we had, you had the indoor shooting range, and then back behind all the bays, you had these big old plate glass windows, 4x8 plate glass window, and he'd fire that Desert Eagle, and the glass would rattle. Sports Mobile 83, hello from Cleveland. Helen, Georgia. I'll be pretty up there right now. The leaves started turning. Oh yeah, Gray Wolf. We had a cop locally that had one of the Charter 44 Special Bulldogs. I was doing an undercover dope thing, and it went south right quick. And he was inside of a pickup truck, a Ford pickup truck with the windows up. And he pulled the gun and shot, not wanting to shoot the guy, but, just like bang, and shot the door over there, trying to intimidate him, make him put his hands up, so he could arrest him. He pulled the trigger and it popped his eardrums. The concussion inside that cab busted his eardrums. Had to retire being a cop. They finally got him with ear stuff where he could use hearing aids and be able to hear you. Otherwise, he was stone cold deaf. Shooting big gun in a small space is never a good idea. Oh, Randy, yeah, the Black Hawk and 30 carbine, yes, sir. That it definitely got a pop to it. Yes, the old 11 gauge 75s, 70 calibers, slightly, just under a 12 and just, between the 12 and the 10, like halfway. I know Europe had 11 gauges, but Europe also had 32 gauges. So it was the 410, the 32, the 28, the 20. No. Yeah, the 28, the 20, the 14, the 16, the 12, the 11, the 10, the 8, the 6, the 4, and the 2. Anything bigger than 10 gauge was considered a market gun. It's not legal to hunt with anymore. Kent, have you ever used silk patches? I have used a real tight weave like that. And what it is it will be smoother going down the bore. It's expensive stuff to shoot, but there was they mentioned that in the movie. Silk, he says tight weave. He said silk, another 40 yards. It just stabilizes a little bit better as compared to the cheaper, coarser stuff that do it. For practical purposes, there is no difference. For what we're going to be doing, is no difference. Well, good. I hope the leaves change real well this year. I'm hoping to get to go up north a little bit and see the colors when I go in 2 weeks. Yeah, Randy, the 86 and 32 European market. The 14 gauge really came out of Europe. They used it a lot in India. Greener made a 14 gauge shotgun that had 3 firing pins on each chamber, and it had to hit all 3. One was the actual primer, and the other 2 were safeties. And it was for guards and things like that, so that if the bad guys stole the gun, they couldn't shoot it. They couldn't put any other ammunition in it and get it to shoot except that ammunition that was in prison. And they didn't know how to make it work, so to speak. But it was a 14 gauge shotgun. I remember them importing them at one point, and telling people about it for collector's items, stuff like that. Gordon, 4 gauge and 4 bore. I think they're slightly different. I believe that for our practical purposes, we're talking about the same thing, but 4 bore guns were quite often rifled, and we're using India and Africa for dangerous game. 4 gauge guns were smooth bores, but I think that there was a slight difference in size of the two. It's been too many years I've dealt with it. I've shot a 4 gauge shotgun before, double barrel 4 gauge. It was an experience. Black powder gun, pull the trigger, it hit you like a 3-inch 12 gauge magnum load. You can see where great granddaddy was killing ducks with that sucker. It had a 38-inch barrel on it, and it come out of the Great Lakes area for hunting duck back before the turn of the century. The turn of the last century, excuse me. Got to remember where I'm at. Edgar, I can't tell you that. I don't know if you can shoot a 12 and an 11. I don't know. It should, theoretically, but the chamber differences. Now, you might be able to get somebody to make you a chamber insert. If the chamber is there to support the shell, yeah, it'll open up and fire down it just like you can fire a 410 and a 20 gauge. As long as you got a chamber insert, something to hold that shell so the shell just don't bust. It's got to be held, otherwise it blows out the side as easy as it goes out the front. Jeff Conley, good night. Yeah, Forsyth rifling. I've heard of it. Yeah, homemade self-reliance. That is correct. The only 8 gauge shells, to my knowledge, still being loaded in the United States are for that. They're used to shoot the slag inside of a blast furnace. So the guy will be in the big outfit, and they'll open the door, and he'll actually shoot to hit clinkers on the walls and bust it. And of course, then the shot just melts with the rest of the stuff. But I know that they were at one time, October Country or something like that out of Ohio was selling a double barrel 8 gauge, and that's what it was. It was for the industrial side, for them blast furnaces and everything. Dances was empty. Great Lakes market gun, correct. Yep, shore sharp pump guns. Them punts that they'd lay them out on the bow and go out there before dawn real quietly, skull up to a big old flight of ducks sitting there on the water. And then they'd yank the trigger and all of them would fire at one time. You'd holler, and just as they lifted off the water, you'd fire. So it'd be just, you can see pictures of guys that would go out hunting and come back with 200 ducks, to go sell them and market them. Ducks were good to hunt because they didn't clean them until you'd bring them home and hang them up by the neck until it rotted off. And then you'd clean it and then cook it. That's how you tenderize the duck. I remember my granddad telling me that. I had no interest in that one. It'll kill. Good evening. Yeah, I duck hunted for a short amount of time, a couple of years. And there was one morning down there just north of Mobile in one of them bayous. I was sitting there in that aluminum boat in that blind. It was a little below 18 degrees with wind blowing off the Gulf, ice forming and that mist on everything. That dog was looking at me like, you shoot anything, I'm going to gnaw your leg off. And as my grandfather said, I had time to reflect. And I got to adding up that you had to have a permit, you had to have the duck stamp, you had to have the dog, you had to train the dog, you had to have the blind, you had to have this, you had to have that, plus the fact that you had to have special shot, a special barrel that could handle steel shot. Now, that's when steel shot was just coming in. Plus being out here in this bitter cold and all like that to shoot a duck. Now, would you be out here, we're talking about a duck. It's one step above a chicken. Would you be sitting here like this to shoot a chicken? No. Why would I can spend $10 and go to the Peking Palace Chinese restaurant over here and get a plate of duck any day of the week. Why am I sitting in this boat freezing to death to spend $50 or $60 a pound on a duck? And I kind of got the idea I didn't want to duck hunt anymore. And so I got rid of all my gear, traded the dog off to somebody else, whole rig, and just never went back duck hunting after that. Edgar, how about Sabots to shoot a 308 and a 12 gauge? Are those cool? Yeah, it'd work fine. You just got to have a proper sabot to do it. For a long time there, Winchester made expediter ammunition. It's because in many parts of the country, you only have a couple of days of a deer season, but you can shoot varmints, ground squirrels, prairie dogs and stuff year round. So you want a varmint gun that you could shoot deer with. Well, that's a 243. You'd put an 80 grain bullet in it and then shoot, prairie dogs and stuff like that. And then you could put 100 grain in it and shoot a pronghorn or a whitetail, something like that. But what about if you got a 30-06 or a 308 or a 30-30? Not that accurate. And so they came up with the Expediter, which was a sabot that took a 5.56 bullet and put it into a 308 case, and you could shoot it in 30-30, 30-06. Preference that 30-30 single load, because you couldn't run it out of the magazine because of the pointy bullet. 30-06, 308, and even 300 Winchester Magnum. And you could load it for a varmint cartridge and go shoot prairie dogs all year long, and then put the full bore in there when you want to hunt deer. And so the thing about it is, when it shoot and that sabot let go, you had a bullet with no rifling marks on it whatsoever. A smooth 5.56, hitting the target and blowing up a prairie dog or something. Bushcraft with the Preacher. Blackie, back in your living history days, what type or make of tomahawk did you prefer to use? without much problems. I had a handmade tomahawk. Oh, make them cry. Now I've had several tomahawks, but I like just a plain old blacksmith handmade type. You can still get them from Dixie Gun Works. Will have them. Gray Owl A&B Forge, really really good. A&B Forge is out of Amish country, and they make a really really good tomahawk. So I prefer them. It was easy to change out the handles if the handles ever cracked or split or whatever, or got beat up, and so that was my preference back in them days. Kent, Blackie, the duck to chicken comparison was hilarious. It was to me too when I was sitting there thinking about it. Like, I'm out here shooting a chicken. You know, we ain't in Montana elk hunting. We're in a swamp in lower Alabama, shooting something the size of a chicken, and we're going to be out here all day hoping we get 3 or 4. When I can stop at the Peking Palace and eat all the duck I want for $10 a plate. So yeah, I kind of, as my grandfather said, I had time to reflect upon my decision. Brett, yeah, they hadn't cleaned it yet. Literally, people would do that in the old times. They would just hang it up by the neck until the neck rotted off, and then they'd gut it and clean it. And yeah, it was a stink. Yeah, Claymore, I know y'all got to shoot cats down there because the domestic house cat's so destructive. It's wild down there. Yeah, I have had. I've mentioned this recipe before, but I'll say it again. The recipe. When you've got some freezer burnt meat that's okay, but it's going to have that taste, you just forgot about it, and times are hard and you don't want to throw it out. When you've got deer and you don't like the taste of deer, when you got lamb or goat or whatever, and you just don't care for the taste of it, you take a big old roasting pan and you cut you up an onion and you put about 8 or 10 pieces of onion on the bottom of it, and you put it in there and you burn it black. I mean, put it at 350, leave it in there 45 minutes, totally dry. Burn that sucker till it's black. Then you mash it up, smear it around on the bottom real good, take out the char pieces out, leave that fond on the bottom of the pan. Take your meat, cube it up into small pieces, put it in there, cover it with good onions, and put an entire bottle of red wine on it and cover the whole thing with aluminum foil and put it in there about 350 for about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how much meat it is. And that will taste really good because all you're going to taste is red wine and onions. And so you can avoid that freezer burnt taste or the taste of lamb or the taste of deer or the taste of duck or whatever. That was the recipe my grandmother used because she hated lamb. But there was times that's what we got, and so she'd cook it that way. She didn't drink either, but she'd get a bottle of red wine to cover up that smell and that taste. So red wine and onions, you can cook just about anything with red wine and onions, and all you're going to taste is red wine and onions. So that's one of them things, when times get hard, you might need to do that. Oh, yeah. We had a friend's house that the power got cut off. Nobody knew it. And he was gone for about 4 weeks in August in Alabama. And he got back and the power had been turned off. And so everything in the refrigerator and everything in that freezer had rotted. And that smell. And we opened all the doors and windows and we used a leaf blower to get as much air out of that building as we could. And then we did probably about 2 cases of air freshener. Talking about how to fog a house. We fogged the house with an air freshener wearing a respirator because we made clouds in that house trying to get rid of that smell and get it out of the walls. Never got it totally out, but made a big difference. Randy, good night. Yeah. Common sense, Karen. It is a way to hide it. And, you know, we grew up poor, and you'd have a deep freezer, and just the luck of the draw, you'd have something there you forgot about, and you hadn't rotated it out enough, and you'd get a little freezer burn on it, and you know that it's okay technically, but it's going to have a taste. Red wine and onions. You'd get a deer, and you don't like deer. Red wine and onions. You know, I haven't ever tried it on fish, but I've used it on many other things before. Donald Gideon, the Make 'em Cry story is awesome. Thank you. Glad you enjoyed it. James Singer, good night. Yep. Benton of the old drowning ducks. Yeah. They would take corn and take a heavy piece of nylon embroidery thread, and they would put it on it and spread it out so about that far apart each one, and you'd make a piece probably 30 yards long, 10 yards, 15 yards long, and you'd tie it to a pole along a fence line, and a turkey would come up and would start eating the corn and swallowing the string. Well, he'd get down his craw and it'd for a wad. And so when he got to the end of the pole, he'd go pull and it won't come back out. It'll tangle up in his craw. And so in the morning you'd come out and there'd be a turkey standing there and you walk up with a club. And that's not legal. That's illegal to do that. I'm just telling you what they did back during the Great Depression about ways to catch goose and swans and big birds like that. That's how they do it. You'd look down the bottom and see a turkey standing there at the pole. You know, we got a turkey. So Kent, what's the easiest method to make pemmican? Can you use store-bought lard? Yes, you can use store-bought lard. Yeah, all it is pounded up meat that's been jerkied or dried, and usually we'd use dried fruits of some kind mixed in to give it a little bit of a better taste, and just combine it, and then make sure it's tallow or make sure it's the right kind of lard. And today you can even go to Walmart and buy tallow. They had duck fat at mine, so hey, you know, if it's available, use it. Claymore, yeah, for invasive carp, yeah. My granddaddy hated carp. They had just started in my area when I was young, and he'd tell the old joke about how you took a board and you nailed the carp to it and submerged it in the pan. You covered it with this, you covered it with that, and all these onions, all this stuff, brought it to a boil. As soon as it boiled, you'd take the fish out and throw it away and drink the broth because the fish ain't worth nothing. Yeah. Yeah, go look at Walmart. In my local Walmart here in Alabama, they got duck fat, tallow, lard, coconut stuff, all kinds of stuff. Just right there where you'd find the Crisco and stuff. There's all kinds of stuff, including duck fat. That just kind of blew me away, duck fat. You know, but hey. Brett, you're thinking too hard there. That's the whole point. The wine is there for the strong taste to hide whatever it is we're eating that we don't want to eat. But times are tough. We got to eat this. Yeah, Kodak, when it's real hard times, you're trying to feed the family. You ain't out here trying to be an outlaw. You're just trying to feed the family. Yeah. When I was a young man, I had to do that a lot. We were feeding the family. So I ran trot lines a lot. I ran trot lines in places that you necessarily wouldn't think to put a trot line or would want people to know you had a trot line. And because of that. And that's one of the reasons I don't eat fish nearly as much as I did in my youth. We go out once a week and we have a place that does really good fish and we eat fish. But I don't eat fish to a great deal beyond that anymore because I ate it so much coming up. Because that was something you could get year round. And you were so glad whenever deer season rolled around. And there was deer and somebody took a hog to butcher and you could get some cuts out of that. And somebody had butchered 5 cows and they had tripe available. If you wanted it, yeah, we'll take it. You know, you poor. You had to do what you could do, what you had. It'll kill my standard fish patties, carp, salmon, whatever. Is I would take it and mince the meat up, add a little salt, add a little pepper, add a little bit of fine ground cornmeal to it and make a patty. And then fry it like you would fry cornbread. Hot skillet, a little bit of peanut oil, something with high smoke content. Put it on there, fry it, flip it 3 or 4 times, and don't dry it out too far. You want to keep it a little bit moist. And go with that. That's how we used to make salmon patties, catfish patties. We have a type of fish down here that's called a sucker. It's a type of carp that comes in out of the ocean in February into January to breed. It's got the little aquarium, the Plecostomus that you see in aquariums for eating algae. Well, it looks kind of like that, but it's a much bigger fish. And they come up in my rivers and stuff down here. We call them sucker fish because they're sucking off the bottom. And you'd go out with a long shank hook and you'd put corn, like whole kernel corn, out of like a can of green giant corn or something on there. And he'll just suck it up and you'd hook him. And a big one's called a red horse. But when you go to try to clean them, there are 10,000 little bitty bones. It looks like a bristle brush. You know, his spine looks like a bristle brush. And so you just got these little bones. We would fillet it out, chop it up, throw it into a blender, and bust it up till it was a fine meal. And then we'd mix it with cornmeal, a little salt, a little pepper, maybe a little bit of paprika, make patties out of it, and then fry it. And you could eat it because them bones are super fine. And once you chew them up, they're flexible. They're more like cartilage than they are actual bone. And so you ate them, you didn't even notice them. They just disintegrated once you started chewing them up. But it was trying to eat it as a whole thing. It was a pain in the butt. So that's the reason we chop them up. But it's a type of carp, I think, or something like that. Yeah, it actually tastes good. It's just I took one time, put it on an ant mound just to see. And after they got done getting all the meat out of it, it looked like a hairbrush. There were hundreds of little bitty bones everywhere, all over that thing. It's really more like you think like 10-pound fishing line, that kind of stuff. But once you chop them up fine, you never even taste it. You just digest it. But we used to do suckerfish run. Deer season would end at the end of January. And the very next weekend was the first weekend of fish camp. Everybody'd be on the creek banks running corn and stuff trying to catch sucker fish. And because now's the time to start filling the freezer because spring fishing, summer fishing, fall catfishing, fall deer season, turkey season down here where I'm at, squirrel, rabbit, all those goes into the freezer. By January, you're running out of fish. Now you're beginning the fish cycle. So it was a cycle, we would try to keep the stuff fished. And, because once deer season's over, you can't legally get a deer. And that's whenever, a deer and a goat's a lot alike. And why am I going to kill one of my goats when I can kill a deer? And so people did their best to kind of keep that rotation going of always putting something in the freezer. Every season that was free, that saved a lot of money. And especially when you're looking today, when you go to Walmart, or you go to the grocery store and get just a small little pile of something. I went today and I got 1 onion, 3 cheap rolls of paper towels, 1 pack of toilet paper, 10 little packages of cat treat, squeeze it out, and 2 of the 24 count boxes of cat food, $78. Yeah, it keep going up. The cat's gonna start learning to eat fish, and Blackie's gonna start running a trot line. Because the grandbaby, we don't have kids. We got fur babies. Grandbaby's gonna start eating some, fish here pretty soon. Because I'm gonna stop paying all that money. Well, guys, that's an hour and 40 minutes. I think we're going to call it quits tonight. I got some stuff I got to do. I appreciate y'all tuning in, and I will be back on next Thursday night. And thank you so much for all the comments and everything. I'll go back and reread them. And thank you guys for all the support. So till next week, y'all have a great day, safe journeys, and I'm here if you need me.